Spider-Man! He's finally making a return at the end of this month, 4 years after the entire world forgot who Peter Parker is. Really, who is that? I don't know. But anyway, by judging everything the cast, director, and Sony have revealed, this isn't going to be the happy new beginning that the title suggests, because Peter is now living completely alone while MJ and Ned have built new lives without him. And to top it off, his body is beginning to transform into something he may not be able to control. Man-Spider! And a mysterious villain can apparently jump inside other people's minds. Oh, and then there's the Hulk, whichever color Hulk ends up being. Punisher and Mac Gargan from Homecoming are officially involved, while the press tour is already discussing Scorpion, Tombstone, Boomerang, Tarantula, and The Hand. So yeah, Peter Parker, whoever he is doing great. Spider-Man Brand New Day, it's being described as a street-level Spider-Man story, with Tom Holland claiming that the filmmakers listened closely to what fans wanted after No Way Home. And for the first time, Holland says he was invited into the creative process before the script had even been written.
Mr. Tom Holland, sir, I'm going to begin with you because, correct me if I'm wrong, you did some internet research about what the fans maybe wanted to see in this next installment before we came here. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been really important to me to feel like a representative of the fans because I loved Marvel as a kid and I was first in line to see the Iron Man movies, the Thor, Captain America's, the early kind of pillars in which we stand upon now. And in the break that we took between Spider-Man No Way Home and Brand New Day, all I would do is comb through the internet and try and get a really good sense of what it is the people wanted. So, this time round is the first time I've been let into the creative process before pen has hit the page.
Which usually happens in the MCU after you've been in, 3-4 movies, then they're like, hey, what do you want? But the most interesting part came immediately afterwards, when Holland explained what kind of Spider-Man story they were trying to create here.
Bringing the voice of the fans to the writer's room, I think has really gave us a leg up in creating something that's really fun and different. They really wanted this street-level Spider-Man movie that felt relatable, that didn't necessarily feel like saving the world, but maybe saving himself. And I really think that we've done that.
They really wanted this street-level Spider-Man movie that felt relatable, that didn't necessarily feel like saving the world, but maybe saving himself. And that final part may tell us more about this movie than anything shown in the trailers, because y'all, Brand New Day appears to be more about whether Peter Parker can survive the life he created at the end of No Way Home. Last we remember, Peter Parker asked Dr. Strangle to erase him from the memories of everyone in the world, as it was the only way to stop reality from collapsing. But it also meant losing every person who still cared about him, because they'd have no memory of him ever existing. And after Peter visited MJ with the intention of explaining everything, he saw that both her and Ned, they were safe and happy. So he reconsidered his decision and walked away without telling her the truth. The movie ended with Peter moving into an empty apartment, sewing a new Spider-Man suit, and swinging into the city all alone. At the time, this looked like a return to the classic version of the character, without the advanced Stark technology, an Avengers membership, and no one waiting at home to help him. Rest in peace, Aunt May. But Brand New Day reveals that Peter has been living like this for 4 freaking years! Marvel's official synopsis says Peter is now an adult living entirely alone, having voluntarily erased himself from the lives and memories of the people he loves. He has devoted himself completely to protecting New York as a full-time Spider-Man, and I'm willing to bet he probably doesn't get paid for it. And according to director Destin Daniel Cretton, Spider-Man's life is actually going pretty well. Can Spider-Man do that? Well, things are going well, at least from the outside. Cretton explains that the city is happy with Spider-Man and that Peter has dedicated 100% of his life to cleaning up New York, which sounds heroic until you consider what 100% actually means. There is only Spider-Man, and all he does is fight crime, save strangers, all to return to an empty apartment and stare at the few objects that remain from a life nobody else remembers. Peter, he's never really had to face this kind of loneliness before, because even when his life was falling apart, there was always someone who knew him and understood what he was carrying. Now there's nobody, and instead of trying to rebuild a life as Peter Parker, he's thrown himself completely into being Spider-Man, probably because it's easier to deal with someone else's problems than his own. That's very real and painful. But anyway, the mask, it gives him a purpose, but it also gives him somewhere to hide. And after 4 years of coming home to an empty apartment, watching MJ and Ned live without him and pretending that this was all part of the plan, it's no surprise that something inside of him is finally starting to break. And unfortunately for Peter, MJ and Ned moved on with life. During the cast's interview with Fandango, yes, Fandango does interviews apparently, Zendaya explained that she had to imagine what MJ's life had become without Peter being part of her memories.
At a new point in their life, and it was kind of fun to imagine, what their lives have been like since we last saw them, and also keeping in mind that Peter is not a part of those memories or that life that maybe she wanted before. So just kind of, I don't know, just trying to build our own little world and existence, and how much she's maybe matured, how much is like her, adorable dry sense of humor still with her,
Is that the quintessential MJ?
Yeah, I think the MJ that we've built from the past, which I still kind of wanted to carry some of that. I was like, I feel like a little bit she's grown out of some of it, but at the heart, I think that's who she is, and I don't want to leave that behind. So I remember we kind of did a pass of some of the scenes, and then we kind of did a re-MJ-ifying pass where we're like, she's a little not weird enough.
According to Zendaya, MJ has grown since we last saw her, although she still remains the dry humor and awkward personality that defined her in the earlier movies. The writers even performed what she called a re-MJ-ifying pass on certain scenes because the character was beginning to feel a little too normal. So thankfully, losing Peter Parker didn't cure MJ of being weird. That's good for weird people like me. We need representation. But Jacob Batalon, the CEO, his comments about Ned and MJ, those are where things especially become painful.
They were able to carry on with their dreams that they had from No Way Home, unfortunately without Peter. And I think that we were able to really bring that to life in the sense of we actually grew up and are having jobs and doing normal adult things now, and it's pretty great. And it's sad to say that we probably had a great time without Peter because we were able to build these lives and truly become who we were supposed to be, and we are still carrying those character quirks. I think Ned is still incredibly obsessed with Spider-Man, even though he doesn't
really
he just woke up one day thinking I kind of want to know who that guy is, so.
Batalon says Ned and MJ were able to keep chasing the future they talked about in No Way Home. They grew up, found jobs, and built lives that actually worked for them, which is great for them and devastating for Peter because by Jacob's own admission, they may have had a pretty good time doing it without him. So in one sense, Peter's sacrifice, it worked, and their lives moved forward without Spider-Man constantly dragging them into danger. The problem is that Sony's official synopsis suggests watching that happen is putting so much pressure on Peter that it eventually triggers a change he may not be able to control. So Peter's transformation, it may start with grief. Y'all, he's spent 4 years telling himself that walking away from everyone he loved was the responsible thing to do. And now he has to live with the proof of that decision every single day. Whatever he's been burying underneath the mask was never going to stay there forever. And it looks like Brand New Day is where it finally starts coming out. Peter's physical evolution. And this is where Brand New Day starts sounding a lot more exciting than a normal street-level Spider-Man movie because Marvel and Sony are being very deliberate with the way they describe what happens to Peter. Marvel, they call it a surprising physical evolution, while Sony says it's a transformation he may not be able to control, which it sounds more like his body is actually changing rather than just a new suit. And we can get these two different answers because unlike many Marvel characters, Spider-Man has a mommy and a daddy. It's Sony and Marvel, okay? They don't always talk to each other. But because the official synopsis says the pressure of watching MJ and Ned move on is what sparks the change in Peter, his emotional state may be directly tied to the transformation. So this could be Peter's body reacting to years of trauma he's never properly dealt with, which is again very real, which is honestly impressive because most people cope by bad eating habits, while our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man just mutates. He's mutating the way he did in the comics. The eyes and organic webbing are direct references to that storyline. Heck, I'd be very surprised if we don't end up seeing him develop arm spikes as well. This is my theory on what's edited out of the prison scene in the trailer. More drastic visual mutations, not other heroes. Yeah, I think that's correct. All of that webbing in that prison scene is coming out of multiple arms, not just his 2 wrists, as they are trying to show. Now, the obvious fan theory is the symbiote. Remember that? At the end of No Way Home, a fragment of Venom's symbiote was left behind in the MCU after Eddie Brock returned to his own universe. And that scene has been sitting there forever and ever, and most of us, including myself, thought it wasn't gonna lead anywhere. But it very well might be a smoking gun, or a Chekhov's smoking gun. So some people are assuming this transformation is where it finally pays off. Maybe the piece of Venom that was left over in his universe bonded with him, and it's too weak to give him the whole Venom kit, but strong enough to rebuild his Spider-Man DNA in a way that it remembers. Now, we've already seen a version of that idea in Spider-Man 3, the movie where the memes comes from, with Tobey, where the symbiote didn't create a completely different Peter so much as bringing out the worst parts of the one that was already there. Also, there was that haircut he had, oh my god. It made him stronger and more confident, but it also fed his anger, ego, and resentment until he barely recognized what he was becoming. So, if Brand New Day is borrowing anything from that story, the real danger may be what happens when it attaches itself to a Peter Parker who has spent 4 years burying grief and a whole lot of unresolved anger that even Tobey's Spider-Man tried to simmer down in No Way Home. The movie may not directly adapt any one of those stories, but the way the director was referencing the comics makes it feel like this movie is deliberately designed to make a comic nerd's day. P.S. I'm also a comic nerd, if you couldn't tell. And if Peter is actually evolving, Bruce Banner's role could be huge and could make a lot more sense because Mark Ruffalo's return initially seemed strange. Why would Hulk be involved in what Tom Holland keeps describing as a grounded, street-level Spider-Man story? Well, the answer could possibly be that Hulk may be there because of Peter. Bruce Banner understands uncontrollable transformations better than almost anyone in the MCU. And maybe my neighbor Phil, his entire life has been defined by his body changing under emotional stress, losing control, hurting people, and learning how to live alongside another version of himself, maybe even more. Now, if Peter starts developing abilities or physical changes he cannot understand, Bruce would be one of the first people capable of studying what is happening. He may try to help Peter control it, or warn him that suppressing it will only make things worse. Or, because this is a superhero movie, the consultation may end with one of them being thrown off a building. The cast's interview also contains one suspicious little exchange when the interviewer asks about Hulk. Tom Holland avoids explaining the context and simply says that Hulk is green. Yes, Tom Holland, you are correct. Hulk is green. And the rest of the cast points out that there are other colors.
Maybe say about like how they're different in the dynamic with Spider-Man. I mean, like, what can you?
Well, the Hulk is green. Is he though?
I don't know.
Why do you
There's
say
there's other colors.
There are.
Yeah, there's other colors of them. Yeah.
I didn't say that, by the way. They said that.
Now, that could mean absolutely nothing. It may just be the cast messing with him because they know every vague comment will become a headline. But it could also be deliberate misdirection around which version of Hulk appears, whether another Hulk-related character is involved, or whether Bruce's transformation becomes unstable again. So no, this doesn't confirm Red Hulk, or Gray Hulk, or Rainbow Hulk. That last one probably exists somewhere in the comics, by the way, or even translucent Chrome Hulk, okay? But the exchange is useful because it shows just how carefully the cast is avoiding the context of Hulk's appearance. And Mr. Hulk may not be the only person Peter has trouble identifying. Earlier marketing made the phrase "villain no one can even see" sound like literal invisibility, but the director's explanation now suggests something different. Director Destin Daniel Cretton has revealed that the central villain can jump into another person's mind. That means Peter may be fighting someone who moves between different bodies. Cretton says Spider-Man comes into contact with a mysterious villain who can enter another person's mind, leaving Peter unable to tell who he is actually fighting. But there's another thing. Peter appears to confront Nacho Varga from Better Call Saul, I mean Mac Gargan, and calls him Scorpion, but the person speaking through Gargan responds with,
"Sure you want to do this, Scorpion? You think I'm Scorpion?"
That one line, it completely changes the villain discussion here, because it suggests that Mac Gargan may not be the real threat in that moment. Someone else may be controlling him. This could explain why the official synopsis refers to a villain nobody can see. They may not be invisible in the literal sense. It may be invisible because Peter can only see the being controlled and not the mind controlling them. And if that villain can jump between hosts, then every character becomes a possible threat, even Peter himself. Wait, could somebody be controlling the piece of Venom that was left behind in Peter's universe too? I'm gonna have to sit and think on that. But anyway, that final possibility is where the transformation plot and the villain plot may connect. If this villain can move between minds and use other people as hosts, Peter's transformation may be his body adapting to a threat he can't fight normally. His spider sense Peter tingle could become sharper, his instincts could change, and he may develop some way of detecting the person behind the face. That would make the transformation both the thing he fears most and the only reason he has a chance of stopping them, forcing Peter to decide how much of himself he's willing to lose to protect the people he loves. And unfortunately, those are the exact people the villain is coming after: MJ, Ned, and the people Peter couldn't leave behind. So the director has already confirmed that the villain targets Peter's best friend and the love of his life to get him, which means MJ and Ned are part of the central conflict here.
And they're threatening his best friend, the love of his life, to get to him.
Think I might go see how MJ's doing.
And that is his biggest fear.
I'm sorry,
but you're in danger. You just have to trust me.
This kind of sort of creates an immediate problem for Peter because, he likes them. He's tried to stay away from them for 4 years because he believed distance would protect them. Now, the exact people he erased himself to save are being dragged back into danger anyway. So Peter's sacrifice, it may have failed. The trailer footage, it does suggest that Peter is eventually forced to contact MJ again. He tells her she's in danger and asks her to trust him, which is a pretty difficult request when, from MJ's perspective, this is just some random dude who's intense that she doesn't remember. But Zendaya's press store comments suggest that MJ has grown up and built an identity without Peter, and the writers had to determine what parts of the old MJ would remain after years of new experiences he was never a part of.
The MJ that we've built from the past, which I still kind of wanted to carry some of that. I was like, I feel like a little bit she's grown out of some of it, but at the heart, I think that's who she is, and I don't want to leave that behind. So I remember we kind of did a pass of some of the scenes, and then we kind of did a re-MJ-ifying pass.
Now, Peter remembers their entire relationship, but MJ remembers absolutely none of it. So even if they reconnect, they aren't meeting as equals here. Peter carries years of love, grief, guilt, and memories, while all she sees is someone new. That imbalance could make their storyline far more complicated than simply reversing Doctor Strange's spell and putting them back together, though. And Tom Holland has now teased that Zendaya has one of the most important scenes in the entire movie. During his interview with John Bernthal, Holland described one scene with Zendaya as possibly the best scene he has ever been a part of.
There's two moments. There's one with Sadie Sink, who's making her MCU debut. She handled the pressure of the character that she's playing with such grace. And the third act, she steals the movie. It is so good. And there is a scene with Zendaya, which is 10 toes down, probably the best scene that I've ever been a part of. She is incredible in it.
And I just watched The Odyssey the other day. He also calls both moments enormous spoilers, which tells us MJ's major scene may involve her discovering the truth of the villain entering her mind, but we don't know for sure though. Or it could force Peter to admit that staying away was never entirely about protecting MJ. Part of him may have also been afraid she would choose a life without him even after learning everything. And fans, they have some theories of their own. So anyone can break Strange's spell by remembering him? Spells can literally be broken. We've seen that countless times. That makes sense too. It's why MJ half recognized him. The memories are there, but the spell is blocking them. I think Ned will be the one to remember him, with his mystical abilities opening up. Or they go the Ned is jealous or upset about forgetting route and turns evil. Spider-Man brand new Doomsday? Now, Ned's role may be equally important as well. Jacob Batalon jokes that Ned is strangely angry with Spider-Man, despite no longer remembering why.
I had to say that we probably had a great time without Peter because we were able to build these lives and truly become who we were supposed to be, and we're still carrying those character quirks. I think Ned is still incredibly obsessed with Spider-Man, even though he doesn't he just woke up one day thinking I kind of want to know who that guy is, so yeah.
Guys, you don't piss off the CEO. But it's kind of funny. Ned wakes up one day with an unexplained desire to find out who Spider-Man is. He's like J. Jonah Jameson Jr. But it could also mean that the spell erased Peter from his conscious memories without completely removing the emotional impact of their friendship. Maybe Ned doesn't remember Peter, but some part of him remembers being abandoned. Maybe he associates that feeling with Spider-Man. Magic is really weird, guys. We don't know how it works. Or maybe the villain's ability to enter minds begins disturbing memories that were magically buried. Ned has already demonstrated he's got magical potential. He opened portals with Doctor Strange's sling ringy thingy, despite having no formal training. However, that doesn't automatically mean he will become a sorcerer, a villain, or the hobgoblin, so, chill out, guys. But it does make him unusually relevant in a story involving a villain that can take over your body, and a spell from the last movie that rewrote the entire world. If the unseen villain enters Ned's mind, it may encounter memories that shouldn't exist. And if Ned somehow begins remembering Peter, that could make him either Peter's greatest ally or the perfect host for the villain. Now, somewhere inside all of this is Sadie Sink. And guys, based on the press tour, her character plays anything but a small role, and she could be anybody at this point. I don't know. The cast, they can't even publicly say who she is. I mean, obviously they can't spoil it, but give us a hint at least, please, bro, a crumb? During the interview, the host joked about how difficult it is to ask Sadie anything without identifying her role. I'd love to see her and Andrew Garfield have a conversation after all of this. But Sadie says joining the franchise was surreal, and that she really likes the character. And then the rest of the cast immediately starts praising her while still refusing to say her name.
Watching these movies, and so to join it was very surreal, and yeah, and I really like the character, and that's all I'll say.
And we really like her.
Yeah,
too.
we like her too.
She's great.
She's awesome.
Who are you?
The secrecy alone doesn't prove she's playing a famous Marvel character, because studios, they hide ordinary roles all the time if the identity reveals too much about the plot. But Tom Holland has said Sadie handled the pressure of the character with grace, and then he claims that she steals the movie in the third act. Suspicious!
One with Sadie Sink, who's making her MCU debut. She handled the pressure of the character that she's playing with such grace. And the third act, she steals the movie. It is so good.
The phrase pressure of the character, that's also interesting. It suggests that the role carries expectations. That could mean she is playing a popular character we already know of. Please be Spider-Gwen, bro. Please, please, I'm begging you, Feige, please. But it could also mean she just has an emotionally demanding role inside one of Marvel's biggest franchises. But the most popular fan theory is, and I'm sure you've seen it, is that she's playing Jean Grey. And yes, a powerful psychic character would fit a story about a villain invading people's minds. Jean could potentially detect the villain, protect Peter mentally, or explain why the enemy cannot simply take control of everyone.
All right, so let's pretend here if I walked into a store and bought some jeans, gray for instance.
And what about them?
What a great answer. What a great answer. Okay, that was actually perfect. That was more
But there's really no direct confirmation that Sadie is Jean Grey. But if she was, she'd make an awesome Jean Grey, red hair and all. This would be an incredibly unnecessary and complicated twist, especially because neither Jean nor Rogue have been done justice in the movies yet. The theory is just because she has the right hair. People aren't really thinking further than that. Other theories suggest Mayday Parker, a new version of Mary Jane, or even a symbiote host. Now, some of those ideas are possible, but we need to separate what we actually know. Sadie is playing a character whose identity the studio is deliberately keeping a secret. The cast likes the character, and she becomes extremely important during the third act. That's all confirmed through the interviews so far. Everything beyond that, though, is theory, but her third act importance may connect to another major reveal. Tom Holland says roughly 95% of what audiences see in the third act was achieved through practical stunt work on the day.
The third act, I'd say 95% of what you're seeing in the movie is all practical stunts that are done on the day. I think the starting off in Glasgow, the swinging down the street behind the truck with explosions going off, that is an unbelievable way to start shooting a movie. That was day one.
Which means that Marvel has access to real telepaths and real Venom symbiotes, no CGI. But what Tom said, that suggests the climax is going to be a banger, and whatever Sadie does to steal the third act, she may be right in the middle of that action delivering the banger. And if the villain can jump between bodies, then the final battle may also be about Peter trying to save everyone the villain is using against him. Punisher, the street-level war, and what the movie is really about. So while Peter is dealing with a villain who can move between minds, one of the strangest people people imaginable becomes his closest ally, Frank Castle, the Punisher, a man whose preferred solution to crime is usually less friendly neighborhood and more permanent neighborhood removal. At first, Spider-Man and Punisher appear to antagonize each other because Peter believes almost everyone can be saved, while Frank believes some people have already made their final decision. And honestly, that makes sense. But according to Tom Holland, their relationship develops into something much more important.
It's more the progression of the relationship. I think the relationship on the page was always that they would antagonize each other, and that was kind of as far as it would go. But as we started working together on set, this kind of, I would call it like big brother, little brother relationship started naturally sort of blossoming as we were shooting. And I think Destin recognized that as kind of gold for the movie, because the whole film is about Peter Parker not having any friends and then finding a friend in the most unlikely partner.
And guys, the only thing more important than friendship is Spotify, because yes, I have great news. Not only can you watch these videos, but now you can listen to our videos while you're ignoring your boss, doing your work, going to sleep, driving to work, ignoring your work and your boss and driving to sleeping work. All of that, you can now listen to these videos in audio form on Spotify. Check the link out in the description, but let's get back to it. So that means Frank may become the first real connection Peter has formed since Doctor Strange erased him from everyone's memories. But dude, out of every person in New York, Peter Parker's new emotional support system is the Punisher? What are the odds? The cast also revealed one recurring joke that we've already seen in the trailer. Whenever Frank tries to swear, Spider-Man webs his mouth shut. Good to know Marvel found a way to place an R-rated vigilante inside of a Spider-Man film without changing who he is.
And I love trying to figure out how you take a very R-rated character and fit him into our world without changing him. And there's loads of fun little Spider-Man quips that we use to kind of get around. Like every time he goes to swear, we just web his mouth shut.
So he's like the new language.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's adorable.
But Frank, he isn't the only part of a much larger street-level conflict here. During the interview, the host mentions the Hand, Boomerang, Scorpion, Tombstone, and Tarantula, or Tarantula, which I will say now. So this could mean Peter may move through a criminal war involving several villains, never knowing which one is actually working for the true enemy. Scorpion appears especially important, though, because Michael Mando's Mac Gargan was introduced all the way back in Homecoming in 2017. Oh my god, 2017. But this is where he blamed Spider-Man for his injuries and later attempted to learn his identity from Adrian Toomes, who is no longer in this universe for reasons I will not talk about. But that setup with Mac has been waiting to pay off forever. Brand New Day may finally pay off his Scorpion setup, although the marketing still needs to be checked carefully before we say the complete suit or transformation is officially confirmed. But the director's comment suggests that even when Peter confronts him, Gargan may not be the person in control. The "you think I'm Scorpion" line implies the villain could use Gargan's hatred, body, or enhanced abilities as a weapon against Peter.
I heard a rumor. You know who he is?
So Scorpion might be both an antagonist and a victim. That's good storytelling. Now, putting everything together, the movie's most likely structure could look a little something like this. Confirmed, Peter is alone. Physical evaluation, mind-jumping villain, MJ and Ned targeted, Hulk, Punisher, Mac Gargan, and Sadie mystery roles. Theory, symbiote, Jean Grey, Peter detecting the villain through mutation, Hulk restraining Peter, Gargan being controlled. But Peter has spent 4 years living almost entirely as the Spider-Man. He's successful as a hero, but emotionally empty as a person, and seeing MJ and Ned move forward without him intensifies the grief he has been suppressing, and his body begins undergoing a dangerous evolution. At the same time, a villain capable of jumping between minds begins using New York's criminals and possibly Peter Parker's friends as hosts. This means Peter can't tell who he's actually fighting. Bruce Banner becomes involved because Peter's body is changing. Punisher becomes involved because the conflict is spreading through the streets, while Scorpion and the other villains become weapons in a war controlled by someone Peter cannot see. MJ and Ned are pulled back into Peter's life because the villain realizes they are still the people he loves most. And Sadie Sink's mystery character becomes vital during the final act, possibly as the key to identifying, resisting, or defeating the person moving between minds. Now, Peter's transformation may initially look like another threat, but if it sharpens his instincts, changes his senses, or protects his mind, it could become the only thing allowing him to detect the enemy. That would force Peter to make an impossible choice.
Miss me, Spidey?
I'm losing my mind. I am totally out of control. I gotta fix whatever this is right now.
Love you because you're you.
If you're gonna do something, you better do it now.
Never forget that. No matter how powerful you become.
No Way Home ended with Peter sacrificing his place in the lives of everyone he loved, but Brand New Day may reveal the cost of that decision, because the longer Peter hides inside Spider-Man, the more difficult it becomes to tell whether the mask is protecting him or just taking over. And that may be the true meaning behind Tom Holland's comment about Peter saving himself, remembering that Spider-Man only matters because he will always, under the mask, be Peter Parker.